Hi everybody, welcome to
Morning.
Symphony's Luck with Grace. Today we are going to talk about addictions. Um, Something that is unfortunately pretty heavy in the world. Something that a lot of us have had some kind of encounter with, whether it be a personal addiction or a addiction from a loved one that we've had to be exposed to and learn how to cope with. And so we decided that this should be our next video, and here we are.
Yep, here we are. Addictions is something that we've had to deal with in our family over the years. Quite a bit of it in our family. So it's a deep subject. I think I'd like to start off with saying, let's define addictions. What are they to you?
Well, for me, I think an addiction is an irresistible impulse to partake in something. Now, not all addictions are bad. There are some that may seem like a very good addiction that may still be harmful because of the amount that you're putting into it. But the addiction itself is not necessarily bad. Like, for example, playing video games. That's an addiction. And yes, it can do harm to your eyes. However, they've done a lot of clinical studies where they've proven that people that play video games tend to be better problem solvers because of all the puzzles in the games and all the things that you got to figure out to do stuff. They've said that they're quicker with reflex thinking because of the same thing. And so, yeah, it comes with some benefits. But if you're playing video games so much that, your wife leaves you or something, then it becomes a problem. So I think that, in my opinion, there's good and bad addictions. What makes it a problem when it's a good one is the extent that you do it, and do you let that become more of a priority than what should be the priorities, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's an obscured way of looking at it, but that's my personal
I don't know,
take
that's
on it. Because video games are highly addicting. It's not a lie.
Not a lie.
Driving can be addicting, but when you're lost your rent because you spent it all on gas, that's a problem too. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it just depends on the intensity of it when it's one of the non-harmful ones. Now, obviously, cigarettes is a harmful addiction. You can't cover that up and pretend like it's not. There's no way around that. I am trying to quit myself, so that's not speaking from a place of judgment, just to make that clear. But cigarettes are a harmful addiction. There's no way around that. It is what it is.
Yeah, and none of this comes from a place of judgment as far as I'm concerned. Because we all have addictions. So
most of you like coffee.
Yep.
I don't. So
I love my coffee. If I don't have my coffee in the morning, at least 2 or 3 cups. So yeah. So one of the things I think that qualifies it as an addiction is it is something that you need, right? Or it's something that you feel you need.
Yeah. Like for me, I'll get upset and I'll be like, God, I need a cigarette. You don't need one. But my body thinks it does, and my brain can't seem to comprehend the difference or compensate it anyway.
Yeah. And I do okay with my coffee. I think without coffee, I think eventually I would.
Oh, you're a lot better now, but as a kid, that was terrifying. If she didn't have her cup in front of her, we turned right back around.
Yeah.
Now it's not as terrifying.
Yeah. But okay,
but I was evil when she woke me up, and now that's not as bad either. So I mean, we all grow. It's okay.
We grow. So what's the difference? And I was kind of a monster when the kids were young and I didn't have my coffee. Not so much anymore. So what was that? A big piece of that and part of what addictions are to me is what's lacking, what are you compensating, So for me, I was compensating the lack of sleep. To coffee kind of helped wake me up, because I wasn't getting enough sleep at night. Now I've worked really hard on kind of regaining my sleep, and have, in my eyes, kind of healed that piece of it, through the use of weighted blankets and having time on my hands.
Mine's Batman.
Yeah. So I've made weighted blankets. I had a small business for a couple years called Miracalm, because when I left my practice, I have such a love and respect for weighted blankets, and I mention that because it does help with addictions.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens, when I want that coffee but it's not there, I'm gonna get really anxious. What happens when you're trying to stop those cigarettes and it's been a little while and it's time for another one? Your body does a reaction. So I think that's also part of addiction to think about is, what's going on in my body. What is my body reacting to? It's one way you can kind of get a clue as to what things you're kind of dependent on, are those things that you feel you can't do without.
Do you start to get jittery? Can you focus on anything but that thing? These are I quit for 8 days, and then kind of got into it with my other half because I was being real pissy for 8 days, and he got fed up, which is fair. But then I got mad and I went and smoked, and now I have to restart. And let me tell you, I'm pissed at myself. Okay, but during that 8 days, the key things that I noticed I struggled with was, one, I was in a significant amount of pain, and I have a lot of physical disabilities to begin with, and they were all intensified tenfold.
Yeah.
And so I had to do something about that. I had to make that manageable. I also had to limit what I was doing because of that. Then I noticed that the only thing I could think about was cigarettes. That was it. I couldn't think about anything else. Like, someone would ask me a question and I'd be like drooling, like, huh? What'd you just say to me? I don't know what you said. And then the other thing was my sleep was very interrupted. And I was just naturally angry and really like twitchy and fidgety. And so thinking about those things, continue. Whatever makes you feel that way tends to be an addiction.
Tends to be an addiction. So, anything, like I said, anything can be an addiction.
Driving a
retail
car.
Therapy is a big one right now, and if you think about that, what happens? You're going along, and all of a sudden, you're feeling kind of the crunch of life. You're like, I just need some retail therapy. So you go out and it feels great while you're doing it, just like a drug or a cup of coffee or a cigarette or whatever else. You're in it. And while you're in it, everything feels great, wonderful, grand. What's happening is you're replacing the natural kind of happy chemical with something outside of you to kind of help create that chemical. So that's one of the things we got to look at as we're trying to figure out what our dependencies are and how to replace them. So,
and one thing I like to say, if because I've had people come to me and say, is this an addiction? Like, am I having a problem? And I'm like, well, let me ask you this. Like, do you feel like it's having a negative effect on you in any way? That's usually my go-to.
Yeah.
If you're not sure, like, if you don't know if you're addicted to something, but you're questioning it, the biggest thing to ask yourself is there a negative effect or a potential negative effect that could come out of this situation? And if so, then maybe ask yourself how you can prevent that. I mean, gambling. I know people that go to the casino once a year, and then I know people that go like every weekend, every other weekend. I know occasional scratchers. I know people that buy 50 scratch tickets every paycheck. And so the occasional ones, no, they're not really having a negative effect. It doesn't, like, you only go up with a certain amount, that's all you intend on spending, that's all you spend, and they don't have an issue, they don't struggle with it. But for these guys, it's a lot harder for them to resist spending that extra and going over. And for this group, it can tend to result in a potential loss of a home or a car, or the inability to pay a bill, lack of food in your home, and that would be it harming you. And so I always tell people, start with that. Like, is there a potential for harm? Because if there is, then how can you prevent it? What can we do?
Yeah. Binge watching Netflix isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but if you're binge watching till 3 o'clock in the morning, you got to get up at 5, and now you get up at 5 and you're dragging ass the rest of the day.
Maybe so tired you almost swerved into that guy.
Yeah. So but and the other piece of that is ask yourself, am I hurting myself? Am I creating harm in myself?
But also to others.
And then yes, is this harming others? Big number one thing I would suggest is be gentle. This is a channel about grace, right? I think we need.
And this weird random white chick right here, I don't know where she came from.
Little Tiffany. Big Tiffany, tall Tiffany.
Not right now. No, I got the shorter chair.
Yeah, I got the bigger chair. So,
gotta keep it light,
But yeah. How are your actions affecting others? How are your actions affecting your pets, your home, your coworkers, your significant other, your children? But throughout all of it, grace is the biggest. One of the bigger pieces is to know that we're all dealing with it in some form or fashion, or we've had it somewhere in our life, whether it's a friend or a family member or a sibling or whatever. So I think grace is a big deal, because I'm going to put Tiffany on the spot. So you want to stop those cigarettes, and the next thing you know, you wake up the next morning, you don't have it, and something happens, and bam, there goes your anger. Right?
And usually your phone.
And yeah. and when you're in the moment of the anger kind of takes over, which is another thing. Maybe this will lead into some balancing work, which I'm all about. Balance. And again, it's okay to watch that Netflix, but maybe not till 3 o'clock in the morning. But something like cigarettes that we've talked about, it, we know it's damaging, period. There's not really a good quality about cigarettes.
Yeah.
They're just harmful. So so Tiffany, she's not, I don't need these cigarettes. Bump, here comes the bump, something that's going to cause her to react, to trigger, to upset, right? And that's what we use that addiction for, right? Calm back down. So we got to find a different way to calm. We got to find a different way to, what are we going to do with these thoughts? What are we going to do with these feelings? What do I do with this energy, this kind of pent up energy, right? And then what happens after you calm back down? Whether or not you had a cigarette or not, what happens after you calm back down? What are you calling me about?
How I feel freaking ridiculous or stupid or bad or whatever.
That's when you need the grace, because we all feel bad, hindsight. So that's a piece that we have to deal with too, a big piece, because then when we feel bad, we start to feel bad. We feel bad about our behavior. If we can't pull ourselves out of that, guess
then
what?
it becomes a different problem.
Yes, and if we can't pull ourselves out of it, then we're gonna break, and we're gonna have that cigarette, or we're gonna have that coffee, or the drug, the retail therapy, the whatever, because and how many times do we do this? I've seen myself do this tons of times. I'm not going to do that. 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 And that works as long as I have the resolve. But as soon as eventually you're going to lose that resolve, which is what happened to Tiffany 8 days into it. All right, that trigger comes up, and bam. We can't make our lives this would be the perfect world, is we'd make our lives perfect and then we won't need whatever said thing is, but
that takes away from the human experience for what it is at face value.
Well, and it's impossible. It's my belief it's impossible. I don't see how
it is
we could live a perfect life free of pain and suffering. So,
and that being said, sorry.
That's okay. We use the addiction to lighten that suffering, I think, in the moment.
And then that being said, it's important to keep that in mind too. Like when you do have that moment, like a lot of people slip when they're trying to quit their addictions. It's a very common thing. Mm-hmm. And to remind yourself, I am only human.
Yeah.
Helps get rid of the guilt. Like it does, because we are all imperfect. No one's perfect. We're all meant to learn lessons, and the best way to learn a lesson is through experience, and that's part of what makes this human experience. And I think if you're not the one that's actually going through the addiction, it's also important to remember that, hey, they are only human. They made a mistake. I made a mistake when I started smoking cigarettes. That was not a smart move. Okay, really? Hi, there's a cat, guys. I don't know why he decided you had to see his spine, but that was the thing. So, yeah, it's on both sides. Whether you're the one addicted or whether you're not one of the addicted, but one that knows them, it's very vital to understand that only human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do not expect perfection, and try not to guilt them too. If they do slip, like I had someone sitting there telling me how messed up it was that I slipped, and that definitely made it harder.
Yeah.
So and I'm not saying you're not allowed to be upset, especially if it did personally affect you. Like I get that too. But try not to take it out on that person, knowing that they are still trying and that it is a very big, very real struggle. And they're feeling guilty enough, I promise.
Yeah.
Like, even the people that are strung out, when they start to come down, they start to feel guilty. It's just, it is. It's part of being human again. So they've got that part covered. Yeah. The best thing you can do is to try to support them in whatever way that you're able to, safely.
Ooh, boundaries.
Back to that word we
that's
love.
That's beautiful. I love how you just said that. Safely. Yeah.
Because if I gotta pay your rent because you threw it all on a bag of meth or something, but it screws me out of my rent, then that's not safe. If you just need help with gas for the week or something and it's not gonna hurt me, then yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So you mentioned meth, so let's talk about. I'm going to survive my night of, if I'm up till 3:00 in the morning watching Netflix, I'm going to survive. There's not going to be real kind of lasting, although there is, it's just it's a different, because I believe that too. I believe, if we don't handle our addictions and kind of look at, kind of all of life has its addictive qualities. So we can get stuck in anything. And over the long haul, it's going to have its effects.
Too much sleep deprivation will make you crazy.
I might eventually lose my job. I might eventually
get into a bad car wreck.
Yes, I might lose a loved one because, they just can't, because I'm not available enough or whatever. But when we get into addictions, major addictions, drug addictions, even sexual addictions, can be very harmful to the people around you. And I think
gambling can too.
Oh,
Quite a few
absolutely.
of them. Alcohol.
Yeah. So I guess very good point, Stephanie. We shouldn't just try to pigeonhole it into drugs. Being the worst addiction out there. It has its own qualities, but all addictions, they all do.